I don't know what they're running to the center for. Maybe that's just where they run when they don't know what to target. The build I started Legacy of Freesia with has actually exceeded my expectations. I was originally planning on using this build as just a stepping stone to some kind of mana stacker, but it actually ended up being pretty good. This build is very squishy. However, I've actually been doing a pretty dangerous farming strategy for hardcore, which is destructive play, which will summon multiple random map bosses, and I have not yet died. In fact, I've felt surprisingly safe. Now that being said, if you're going to try running maps with like crazy map mods on it with low investment gear, you're going to die. But what makes this build actually pretty safe despite the terrible defense is the Whisper node, Not a Word. This node is actually super good, specifically the 100% increased stealth part. This allows us to stand closer to monsters and hit them without even aggroing them onto your character. It's kind of crazy. You'll go do a map boss and they're just like AFK. This also works in Sanctum. It kind of works on Pinnacle bosses, but Pinnacle bosses seem to tend to like walk towards you in a weird way. So I don't think it's very useful there. We also take the Have You Forgotten node, which is crazy powerful for clearing. It feels way better than default power siphoning with Pierce. It just makes your siphons fork all over the entire screen. The There Is More node is good for the +1 max charges and is actually decent QOL with the minimum charges. On a normal power siphon build, if you ever run out of charges, it will feel clunky until you throw some mines and get your charges back, as charge mine scales your throwing speed based on your charges. But with the minimum charges, it's always at least 4, and this will allow you to run the map mod that steals your charges, and if it ever gets stolen from a rare monster or something, you have those 4 minimum charges. The Wait a Little Bit node is pretty meh, as this build doesn't spend much mana, but there's not really any other good options, so we take it for a little bit of extra damage. There probably is a decent way to increase your mana cost to trigger it more, but I haven't looked into it much yet. Now, should you do this version over Scavenger? Well, it kind of depends. If you're just gonna stay and only play Power Siphon, no, probably not. But it is a good alternative if you're looking to play one character for the entire event and you eventually want to pivot into a late game build such as Mana Forge Arrows or Kinetic Blast of Clustering, or just want to play something a bit different that actually changes your playstyle with the stealth node. Another common question I'll probably get, why not Power Siphon of the Archmage? And the answer is you could probably figure out something with it, but you lose the 2 most important bonuses on Power Siphon, which are very powerful, and I have not really looked into using it. Another problem is if you want to go full mana, you'll still have to reserve a decent chunk, as you cannot actually use Eternal Blessing with mines because they reserve mana. There are 2 really good uniques for this build. The main one is Marlene's Fallacy. Since you get so much crit chance with this build, you can negate the downside of 40% less crit chance on the amulet and get a massive DPS boost with a 240% or so crit multiplier. This amulet's not required. I haven't been using it on my character. You can just use any rare amulet. The other unique, which is really good, is Dodri's Tenure, which grants 100% increased spell damage, which also gives a nice damage boost since Power Siphon scales well with spell damage. For your wand, the main thing you are looking for is a high roll of flat lightning damage. Once you get a Marlene's Fallacy, you also need a wand with a crit chance roll on it. The rest of your armor and jewelry is mainly just going to be getting life, res, suppression. For leveling this build, you're going to level with Cobra Lash into Power Siphon until level 31 when you unlock Charge Mines in Library, which will allow you to swap to Power Siphon. For Ascendancy order, I'd go There Is More, Have You Forgotten, Not a Word, and then Wait a Little. Looking at my character's POV here, we can get a look at what you can realistically expect to look like after a couple days of playing. So I'm currently on a 5 link, and my wand is very bad. It's essentially a 1 mod wand with a crafted modifier on it, and I'm at 1.2 million DPS, which is pretty damn good considering the gear I have anyways. And then the defense is not so hot, but I already talked about that a bit. And if you include Immortal Call, it goes up a little bit more. And then if you use endurance charges with the Enduring Cry, which doesn't have great uptime, I don't do it very often, but it helps a little bit if you can pop it on a boss or something. So I'm going to format this to be nicer for the one I link in the description, but just figured it would be helpful to go over the gear I actually have. So like I said, all my res and all my armor and jewelry stuff is just like life and res. A little bit of like offensive modifiers here and there, but mostly just life and res. Ideally, I'd have suppression on all my pieces of gear, so I'd be able to drop these nodes, but alas, it's a little hard to do so quick. And I do not have Maralene's yet, so just a amulet with life and res. Ideally, on your amulet, you'll anoint overcharge, which isn't too expensive, but again, early on, not really the easiest thing to do. Oh, that was a juke. Unlucky ball placement. Need a flask refill anyways. Oh, they still went down.